The collective had known peace for 10,000 years. 12 species lived together across 1,000 star systems. They traded goods. They shared knowledge. They built beautiful cities on beautiful worlds. They had forgotten what war felt like. Ambassador stood at the observation window of the High Council chamber. She was tall and thin, with 4 arms and large black eyes that reflected the stars. Her people, had always been diplomats. They solved problems with words, not weapons. Violence was something from old stories, from a time before civilization. But now violence had found them. The holographic display behind her showed the border colonies. 3 of them, 40 million people, gone in 6 days. The devouring swarm had arrived. Nobody knew where they came from. They appeared at the edge of collective space like a dark cloud of hunger. Their ships were not made of metal, they were alive. Giant creatures that flew through space, eating everything in their path. Planets, stations, ships, people. The collective had sent their defense fleet. It was a small fleet because they had never needed a big one. The drones fired their energy beams at the swarm ships. The beams hit. The swarm ships did not care. Their organic hulls absorbed the energy like food. Then they ate the drones too. Watched the recordings again and again. She saw the evacuation ships trying to escape from the colony on Prime. She saw the swarm creatures catch them. She saw families, children, teachers, doctors, all disappearing into those hungry mouths. The screaming lasted for a long time before the transmission ended. The High Council was in chaos. 12 species, each with their own representatives, all talking at once. Some wanted to flee, some wanted to negotiate, some just sat in silence, too afraid to speak. Elder, the oldest member of the council, raised his trembling hand for quiet. He was a small furry species known for their wisdom. His voice was weak but steady. "We cannot fight them," he said. "We have never been fighters. Our weapons are useless. Our ships are too slow. If we try to stand against the swarm, we will all die." "Then what do we do?" asked another. "Run, hide, for how long?" "There is nowhere to run," answered. "The swarm does not stop. It does not negotiate. It only consumes. We have perhaps 2 months before they reach our core worlds. Then it will be over." The chamber fell silent. Felt cold fear spreading through her body. She thought of her home. She thought of her family. She thought of all the billions of people who would die screaming like those on Prime. Then she thought of something else, something forbidden. "There is one option we have not discussed," she said. The council turned to look at her. She was young for an ambassador, barely 200 years old, but her voice did not shake. "The quarantine zone," she continued. "Sector 7G, The room erupted in noise, fear, anger, disbelief. "You cannot be serious," shouted a representative. "Those creatures are monsters. They are worse than the swarm." "We do not even know if the stories are true," another said. "No one has contacted them in centuries." Raised his hand again. The room slowly quieted. "Tell us what you know, Ambassador," he said. "Tell us about the humans." Took a deep breath. She had studied the old records. She knew the history that most people try to forget. "Earth is a Class 12, she began. "The highest classification in the Galactic Registry. The gravity is crushing. The atmosphere is corrosive. The planet is covered in predators, poisons, and natural disasters. By all scientific understanding, intelligent life should not have evolved there." She paused. "But it did. The humans survived. They did more than survive. They dominated their world. They hunted the predators. They conquered the disasters. They built civilizations that rose and fell and rose again. They fought each other for thousands of years. They invented weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Then they invented peace." "How is that possible?" asked a young. "We do not know," admitted. "That is why they were quarantined. 300 years ago, a scout ship made contact with their system. They had just begun exploring space. The scout recorded images, data, biological samples. What they found was terrifying. She activated a new hologram. It showed a human, 2 arms, 2 legs, flat face, small eyes, teeth. They are pursuit predators, explained. They evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They can run for days without rest. They heal from wounds that would kill any collective species. They survive temperatures that would freeze us or boil us. Their bones are dense. Their muscles are strong. They eat plants and animals, sometimes both at the same meal. They stared at the image with horror. Their history is filled with violence, continued. Wars, conquests, genocides. They killed millions of their own kind in conflicts we cannot even understand. The scout ship recommended immediate quarantine. The council agreed. No contact, no trade, no communication. The humans were left alone in their corner of the galaxy. "And now you want to invite them here?" asked quietly. Nodded, yes, because the same reports that described their violence also described something else. Humans protect those who cannot protect themselves. They form bonds with weaker creatures. They feel something called compassion for strangers. When they see suffering, they act to stop it. "Or they cause the suffering," someone muttered. "Perhaps," agreed, "but we have no other choice. The swarm will kill us all. The humans might kill us, might. It is the only chance we have." The debate lasted for 3 days. Many refused to even consider the idea. They said it was madness. They said humans would conquer what remained after the swarm finished. They said death was preferable to asking monsters for help. But in the end, fear of the swarm was greater than fear of the unknown. The vote passed by a single margin. Personally recorded the distress signal. She kept it simple. She explained who they were. She explained what was happening. She asked for help. The signal was sent toward the quarantine zone, toward Earth, toward the humans. Then they waited. 12 days passed. The swarm consumed 2 more colonies. Hope began to fade. Then on the 13th day, a response came. The message was short. The voice was strange, deep and rough and somehow warm. Message received. Hold on, we're coming. Played the message for the council. Nobody spoke. Nobody knew what to say. Help was coming, but nobody knew what that help would look like. The collective had called for salvation. The had answered. Now they could only wait and pray that they had not made a terrible mistake. 3 weeks after the signal was sent, the human fleet arrived. Was in her quarters when the alarm started. She ran to the observation deck, her 4 arms trembling with fear and hope. Through the massive window, she saw them. 17 ships dropped out of hyperspace near the. They were not graceful like collective vessels. They were blocky and angular, covered in armor plates and weapon systems. They looked like they were built for one purpose: war. The largest ship was in the center. It was called the Indomitable. Later, would learn that this name meant cannot be defeated. She thought it was a very human name. The council immediately sent a greeting message. They welcomed the humans. They thanked them for coming. They asked permission to send a diplomatic team aboard the flagship. The response came quickly. Permission granted. Docket Bay 4 will be waiting. Was chosen to lead the delegation. She was the one who had argued for contact. She was the one who had sent the signal. Now she would be the first collective citizen to meet a human face to face. The shuttle ride felt like the longest journey of her life. She sat with 2 other diplomats, a security officer and a translator. Nobody spoke. They were all too afraid. The docking bay of the Indomitable was huge and gray and loud. Machines hummed. Lights flickered. Somewhere metal clanged against metal. The air smelled strange, heavy, full of chemicals and oil and something else that could not identify. A group of humans was waiting for them. Had seen images. She had studied the old records, but nothing prepared her for the reality. They were big, not just tall but thick. Their bodies were packed with muscle under their strange fabric coverings. They stood firmly on 2 legs, perfectly balanced despite the heavy gravity they had evolved in. Their faces were flat, with small forward-facing eyes that tracked every movement, predator eyes. And they had teeth. When they opened their mouths, could see rows of white teeth. Some were flat for grinding, some were pointed for tearing, omnivore teeth. They could eat anything, anyone. The leader of the group stepped forward. He was older than the others, with gray in his short black hair and scars on his face. His skin was the color of light brown wood, and his eyes were dark and deep. He wore a uniform covered in symbols and patches. When he smiled, almost ran. But she did not run. She stood still and waited. "Ambassador," the human said. His voice was deep but soft. "I'm Captain Park. Welcome aboard the Indomitable." He extended his hand, knew from the old records that this was a greeting gesture. She reached out with one of her own hands and touched his. His grip was gentle, careful. He was being soft on purpose, she realized. He knew how fragile she was compared to him. He was trying not to hurt her. "Thank you for coming, Captain," managed to say. "We did not know if you would respond." Nodded slowly. "We almost didn't receive your signal. Our long-range arrays aren't usually pointed toward this region. Lucky timing." "Or fate," said a woman standing beside him. Gestured to her. "This is Commander, my second in command." Was shorter than the captain, but her presence was just as strong. She had sharp eyes that seemed to cut through everything they looked at. She did not smile, but she gave a small nod of respect. "We have reviewed the data you sent about the swarm," said. "We have questions." "Of course," replied. "We will share everything we know." Led them through the ship to a meeting room. Along the way saw more humans. They were everywhere, working on machines, carrying equipment, talking and laughing. Some of them stopped to look at the aliens with curiosity. None of them seemed afraid. The meeting room was simple. A large table, chairs of different sizes, screens on the walls showing maps and data. Sat down and gestured for the delegation to do the same. Then he asked questions, many questions. He wanted to know about the swarm's numbers, their attack patterns, their weaknesses, their biology. He wanted to know how fast they moved, how they communicated, what they ate. He wanted to know about the colonies they had destroyed. Answered as best she could. When she described the attacks, when she showed the recordings of the screaming families, her voice broke. She could not continue. Watched the recording in silence. His face did not change, but something in his eyes did. It became harder, colder. When the recording ended, he spoke quietly. "How many civilians are still in the danger zone?" "Approximately 200 million, answered. "Spread across 12 systems. We cannot evacuate them fast enough." Nodded, he looked at. She looked back. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "We'll need star charts," said. "Complete tactical data, supply routes, refugee locations, everything." "You will have it," promised. "What do you need in return?" The humans exchanged glances, prepared herself. This was the moment she had feared. The price. What would monsters demand for their help? Leaned back in his chair. "Nothing." Blinked. "I do not understand." "We don't fight for payment," explained. "We fight because it's the right thing to do. Someone asked for help. We came to help, that's it." "But surely you want something. Resources, territory, political influence." Shook her head. "Ambassador, where we come from, there's an old saying. The only thing necessary for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. We are not going to do nothing." Felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Relief, hope, trust. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. Smiled again. This time the teeth did not seem so frightening. "Say you'll fight beside us," he said. "Say you'll trust us. Say you'll let us do what we do best." "What is that?" The captain stood up. He walked to the window that looked out at the stars, at the direction where the swarm was waiting. "We protect people," he said. "It's what we were made for. Every war we ever fought taught us something. Every mistake we ever made taught us something. All that history, all that pain, it wasn't for nothing. It was training, preparation, for moments like this. He turned back to face her. The swarm thinks it's the biggest predator in this galaxy. It's about to learn that it's wrong. Stood up, she extended her hand the way it had done earlier. Then we fight together, Captain. We trust you. Took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. You won't regret it, Ambassador, I promise. That night sent a message to the High Council. She told them about the meeting. She told them about the humans. She told them something she had not expected to say. They are not monsters, she wrote. They are something else, something we have never seen before. I think they might actually save us. She did not know yet how right she was. And she did not know how much the humans would sacrifice to keep that promise. The combined fleet moved toward the front lines. It would take 8 days to reach the combat zone. During that time, Ambassador lived aboard the Indomitable. She learned many things about humans. On the second day, she visited the ship's training area. The security chief, unnamed, had insisted on seeing how the human soldiers prepared for battle. What they saw made its legs go weak. Marine Sergeant Han was leading a group of soldiers through what she called morning exercises. The soldiers ran in circles around the room for 30 minutes without stopping. Then they dropped to the floor and pushed their bodies up and down, using only their arms. Then they lifted heavy metal objects over their heads again and again. Noticed the aliens watching. She jogged over to them, barely breathing hard. Sweat covered her skin, but she was smiling. "Want to join us?" she asked. Made a choking sound. How long do you do this?" "This is the warm-up," said. "Real training starts after breakfast." She explained that human soldiers train their bodies every single day. Running, lifting, fighting, climbing, swimming. They pushed themselves to exhaustion, rested, and then did it again. "Why?" asked. "Why hurt yourselves like this?" Smile faded. Her eyes became serious. "Because on Earth, if you were slow, you died. If you were weak, you died. Our ancestors survived because they were tougher than everything trying to kill them. We honor that by staying strong." She picked up a metal weight that looked heavier than its entire body. She lifted it above her head like it was nothing. Also added, "It feels good." On the fourth day, visited the engine room. She found Chief Engineer elbow-deep in a machine, covered in grease and oil. Was a thin man with tired eyes and quick hands. He had been working for 16 hours straight. When asked if he needed rest, he laughed and held up a cup of dark liquid. "This is coffee," he said. "It keeps us awake." Scanned the liquid with her personal device. The readings were alarming. "This contains dangerous stimulant chemicals," she said. "The concentration is toxic to most known species." Shrugged. "Yeah, that's why it works so well." He drank the entire cup in 3 gulps. Then he wiped his mouth and went back to work. "Humans do this regularly?" asked. "Every morning. Some of us drink 4 or 5 cups a day." "But the health effects?" "Probably not great," admitted. "But this ship needs to run perfectly. If I need to poison myself a little to make that happen, that's fine. I'll sleep when the war is over." Watched him work. His hands moved with incredible skill, adjusting and fixing and improving. He talked to the machines like they were old friends. He seemed to love them. "You care about this ship," she observed. Paused. He looked at her with those tired eyes. "This ship carries 4,000 people. My friends, my family. If the engines fail, they die. So the engines won't fail, not while I'm alive." On the 6th day, met doctor in the medical bay. Was a small woman with gentle hands and a warm voice. She had been treating a soldier who had injured himself during training. A broken bone, called it. A common injury. "His skeleton cracked," said, horrified. "And you call this common?" Nodded calmly. "Bones break, they heal. Humans have been breaking and healing bones for millions of years. Watch." She showed a scan of the soldier's arm. The bone was cracked clean through, but already explained the body was starting to repair itself. Cells were multiplying. Calcium was being deposited. In 6 weeks, the bone would be stronger than before. Stronger, repeated. Bones grow back thicker at the break point. Same with many injuries. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. It's not just a saying, it's biology. Went on to explain other aspects of human physiology. Their immune systems were constantly fighting off microscopic invaders. Their blood could clot to stop bleeding. Their bodies could adapt to heat, cold, altitude, and radiation. We are very hard to kill, said simply. Evolution made us survivors. But it was the ship's cook who taught the most important lesson. O was a round man with a loud laugh and kind eyes. He ran the main kitchen, preparing food for thousands of humans every day. When he learned that delegates were aboard, he insisted on cooking for them personally. Found this strange. In the collective, food preparation was done by machines. Nobody wasted time on such simple tasks, but approached cooking like an art form. He researched biology. He studied their nutritional needs. He tested recipes until he found combinations that were safe and delicious. He presented the food with care and pride. "Why do you do this?" asked as she ate the best meal of her life. "You could be doing something more important." Sat down across from her. His expression was serious. "Ambassador, there is nothing more important than this. Cooking food. Taking care of people." He spread his hands. "Everyone on this ship is going to fight. Some of them will die. I can't change that. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a cook. But I can make sure that every person who walks into battle walks in with a full stomach and a happy heart. I can give them a moment of comfort before the chaos begins." He looked at the plate in front of. "I spent 3 days learning how to cook for your species. 3 days of testing and failing and trying again. Because you are our guest. Because you are our ally. Because you matter." Felt tears forming in her large black eyes. "I don't understand you humans," she admitted. "You train your bodies until they break. You poison yourselves to stay awake. You heal from injuries that would kill us. You are terrifying, but you are also kind. How can both things be true?" Smiled. It was a warm smile, full of understanding. "Because that's what being human means. We are strong so we can protect the weak. We are tough so we can endure suffering for others. We are violent so we can stop those who would hurt the innocent." He reached across the table and gently touched one of her hands. "Our ancestors learned these lessons through blood and pain. They taught us that power without compassion is meaningless, that strength without kindness is wasted." He stood up and gathered the empty dishes. "We are not monsters, Ambassador. We are guardians. We just needed someone to guard." That night, wrote another message to the High Council. "The humans are everything the old reports said. They are dangerous. They are powerful. They are from a world that should have killed them." She paused, thinking about strength, dedications, healing, and kindness. But the reports missed something. The humans did not just survive there. They learned from it. Every challenge made them stronger. Every battle taught them to protect each other. They evolved into the galaxy's most dangerous predators, and then they chose to become its defenders. She saved the message and looked out the window at the stars. Tomorrow, they would reach the combat zone. Tomorrow, she would see what humans looked like when they went to war. She was no longer afraid. She was ready. Station was the last hope for 2 million refugees. The massive space station floated in orbit around a dead planet. It was never meant to hold so many people. It was designed as a trading post, a rest stop for merchants and travelers. But when the swarm came, it became the final destination for everyone who managed to escape the border colonies. Now the swarm had found it. Ambassador stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display. The swarm had surrounded the station. Hundreds of bioships formed a living wall between the refugees and freedom. Their organic hulls pulsed with hunger. Their weapon tentacles twitched with anticipation. The collective fleet hung back, too afraid to attack. They had tried once before. They had lost 40 ships. Now they waited for a miracle. The miracle had arrived. Captain Park stood at the center of the bridge, calm and steady. Officers moved around him, reporting data, confirming systems, preparing weapons. The air was thick with tension. "All ships report ready," Commander announced. "Weapons armed, shields at full power." Nodded, he opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain to all human vessels. Today we fight for people we've never met, from species we've only just learned about. Some might ask why. Some might ask what we gain from this." He paused, his voice became harder. "The answer is simple. Those are 2 million people behind that swarm line. 2 million mothers and fathers, sons and daughters. They are scared and they are trapped and they have no one else to save them. That is enough reason. That is the only reason we need." He looked at his crew. They looked back at him with fierce determination. The enemy expects prey. They have only ever faced prey. They don't know what a predator looks like. Today we teach them. He raised his hand. "All ships attack formation, full speed ahead." The human fleet charged. Felt the ship lurch as it accelerated. The engines roared with power. Around her, humans moved with practiced efficiency. No fear, no hesitation, just focus. "Missile bays opening," reported. "Weapons officer has targeting solutions." Was a young woman with steady hands and cold eyes. She sat at the weapons console, her fingers dancing across the controls. Her voice was flat and professional. 112 targets identified. Nuclear warheads armed, ready to fire on your command. Watched the distance counter decrease. The swarm bioships were growing larger on the. They had noticed the attack. They were turning to face this new threat. "They're charging their organic weapons," someone reported. "Bioplasma cannons powering up." "Let them," said. "Hold fire until optimal range." The seconds stretched like hours. The swarm opened fire first. Green plasma bolts streaked through space, slamming into the human ships. The Indomitable shook. Alarms blared, but the ship held. "Shields at 92%, an officer called out. "Optimal range reached," announced. His voice was ice. "Fire everything." The human fleet unleashed hell. Nuclear missiles screamed through the void. Kinetic rounds tore through the darkness. Laser batteries carved lines of fire across the battlefield. The first volley hit the swarm formation like a hammer hitting glass. The bioships had evolved to absorb energy weapons. They were not prepared for nuclear explosions. The missiles detonated in blinding white flashes, vaporizing organic tissue and shattering carapaces. Swarm creatures screamed in frequencies that hurt to hear. 12 enemy ships destroyed, reported. Her voice remained calm. Reloading. But the swarm had numbers. For every ship that died, 3 more took its place. They swarmed toward the human fleet, trying to close the distance, trying to use their sheer mass to overwhelm the attackers. "They're adapting," observed, "spreading formation to reduce missile effectiveness." "Then we go in close," decided. "All ships prepare for close quarters combat, launch fighters." The fighter bays opened. Small, fast attack craft poured out into space, piloted by the best humanity had to offer. Shin led his squadron into the chaos. He was young, barely 25 years old, but he had reflexes that made him seem superhuman. His fighter danced between enemy fire, avoiding attacks that should have been impossible to dodge. "Joker squadron on me," he ordered. "We're punching through to the station." His wingman was IM, a woman with laughing eyes and nerves of steel. She had flown with for 3 years. They trusted each other completely. "Right behind you, Joker leader," she said. "Let's show these things how it's done." The squadron dove into the swarm formation. Their guns blazed, ripping through soft organic hulls. Bioships exploded around them. Tentacles reached out, trying to grab, trying to crush, weaved through them like a dancer avoiding clumsy hands. Then's voice crackled over the radio. "Joker leader, I'm hit. Engines gone, controls are not responding." Looked at his scanner. His fighter was spinning, trailing smoke. Behind her, a massive swarm carrier was moving toward the station, full of boarding creatures ready to kill the refugees. "Eject, I'll pick you up." There was silence for a moment, then spoke again. Her voice was calm, at peace. "Negative, Joker leader. No time. The carrier is too close to the station. If it docks, everyone dies." "It don't. Tell my mom I love her. Tell her I died for something that mattered." She cut the communication, watched in horror as her spinning fighter straightened out. She had regained some control, just enough. She aimed directly at the swarm carrier. The explosion was visible from the Indomitable. His fighter hit the carrier's weak point, the central mass where the pilot creatures clustered. The carrier tore itself apart, taking a dozen smaller ships with it. The path to the station was clear. But the battle was not over. On station itself, the swarm had managed to dock several boarding ships. Creatures poured through the breached hulls, hungry for the soft prey inside. Refugees screamed and ran. Lieutenant Gong led a platoon of human Marines to stop them. Was not a big man, but he moved with the confidence of someone who had fought in many battles. His soldiers followed him without question. They knew he would die before he let harm come to an innocent. "Docking Bay 7 is breached," a station officer cried. "Swarm creatures are inside." His soldiers ran with him. They reached the docking bay as the first swarm creatures were emerging. The things were nightmares made flesh. Six-legged horrors with too many eyes and mouths full of teeth. They were fast. They were strong. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had never faced human Marines. "Open fire," shouted. The corridor exploded with gunfire. Human weapons tore into swarm flesh. The creatures fell screaming, but more came, always more. The Marines held the line for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3. Ammunition ran low, some soldiers fell, kept fighting. A swarm creature lunged at him. He shot it in the face. Another grabbed his left arm. He felt the bones crack, felt the flesh tear. He shot that one too, even as his arm was ripped away at the shoulder. Blood poured from the wound. Any other species would have died instantly, but was human. He stayed on his feet. "Medic," someone screamed. "No time," roared. He switched his rifle to his right hand. He kept firing. Hold the line until the civilians are evacuated." They held the line. For 6 hours the human Marines fought. When their guns ran empty, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used fists. When they were too wounded to stand, they lay on the ground and kept shooting. Every single one of them was ready to die. None of them did. At the end of the 6th hour, Sergeant Han arrived with reinforcements. Fresh Marines poured into the station, pushing the swarm back, sealing the breaches, securing the docking bays. Found sitting against a wall, his empty rifle across his lap, his left arm gone, his face pale from blood loss. He was barely conscious. "How many?" he whispered. Knelt beside him, she smiled. "All of them, Lieutenant. All 2 million, they're safe." Closed his eyes. A tear ran down his cheek. Then it was worth it. Outside the station, the swarm fleet was broken. The surviving bioships fled into deep space, their formation shattered, their hunger replaced by something they had never felt before. Fear. Captain stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy retreat. Ambassador stood beside him. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Shook his head. "We did it together. Your ships held the evacuation routes. Your pilots flew cover for the transports. This was a joint victory." He looked at the station. at the millions of lives that had been saved. "This is what humans do, Ambassador. This is what we were born for, not conquest, not destruction, protection." Felt tears running down her face. "The swarm will return," she said. Nodded, "Then we'll be ready, and next time we finish it." The battle was over. But the war had just begun. The war lasted 3 more years. It was not easy. The swarm was vast and their hunger was endless. They attacked from every direction, consumed entire systems, and adapted to every weapon used against them. There were dark months when defeat seemed certain. But the humans did not give up. They never gave up. Captain Park became admiral. He led fleet after fleet into battle, always at the front, always facing the worst the swarm could throw at him. His hair turned fully gray. His body collected more scars, but his eyes never lost their fire. Commander took command of her own ship, the Unbroken. She became famous for impossible victories, for turning certain defeat into triumph through sheer tactical genius. The swarm learned to fear her name. Lieutenant Gong returned to duty with a mechanical arm. He trained new generations of Marines, teaching them not just how to fight, but why to fight. Every soldier who served under him left with the same fire in their hearts. And slowly the collective changed. The other species watched the humans fight. They studied their tactics. They learned from their courage. For 10,000 years, the collective had never known war. Now they learned. It was not easy for them. They were not born to violence. Every battle left scars on their souls. But they understood now what the humans had always known. Some things were worth fighting for. Ambassador became the voice of the Alliance. She traveled between worlds, between species, spreading the message of unity and resistance. She told the story of Station. She told the story of Iam, who gave her life to save strangers. She told the story of the humans who had crossed the galaxy to help people they had never met. The collective built new ships, not trading vessels or transport craft, but warships. Real warships with human weapons and collective technology combined. They trained their people to be soldiers. They learned to be brave. By the end of the 2nd year, the collective fleet was fighting alongside the humans as equals. By the end of the 3rd year, they were winning. The final battle took place above the swarm's hive world. It was a dark planet, covered in living tissue, pulsing with the collective consciousness of 1 trillion hungry minds. From here, the swarm queens commanded their endless armies. From here, the invasion of the galaxy had been planned. This was where it would end. The combined fleet gathered in orbit, 300 human ships, 500 collective vessels, thousands of fighters, millions of soldiers. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the world that had caused so much death and suffering. Stood beside him, as she had since the beginning. "This is it," he said. "The heart of the swarm. If we destroy the queens, the rest of the hive will fall apart." "The planetary defenses are strong," observed. "The casualties will be enormous." "I know," his voice was heavy. "That's why we're not leading this assault." Looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" Turned to face her. His eyes were tired but proud. "Ambassador, 3 years ago we came here because you asked for help. We taught you how to fight. We bled beside you. We died beside you. But this is your galaxy. This is your home. The final blow should be yours." He gestured to where the collective flagship was moving into position. It was a beautiful ship, built with the best of both human and collective technology. It carried weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand stars. It was commanded by Admiral, who had once been a peaceful merchant, who had watched his family die when the swarm attacked his, who had sworn to make them pay. "We'll provide cover," continued. "We'll keep the swarm fleet busy, but when the moment comes, the collective will deliver the killing strike. This is your victory to claim." Felt tears forming in her eyes. "You're giving us the honor of ending this." No, smiled. You earned it. Every species in this alliance earned it. You were prey. You became predators, not because of us, but because of you. We just showed you that it was possible. The battle began. It was brutal. It was costly. Ships burned on both sides. The swarm fought with desperate fury, knowing that their queens were threatened. They threw everything they had at the attackers. The humans held the line. They always held the line. Ship took a direct hit that should have destroyed it. She kept fighting with half her systems offline, worked miracles in the engine room, keeping the ship alive through sheer stubbornness, led boarding parties against swarm vessels, clearing them one by one. And through it all, the collective fleet pushed forward. Admiral guided his flagship through the chaos. His crew was terrified. Many of them had never seen combat before this war, but they did not run. They did not hesitate. Planetary bombardment range reached, his weapons officer announced. Looked at the hive world on his screen. He thought of his wife, his children, his home, all gone because of the creatures on that planet. Fire, he said. The collective fleet unleashed everything. Human nuclear missiles, collective plasma beams, weapons that had never been used before. The planet's surface exploded in fire. The queens screamed in frequencies that echoed across the stars. One by one they died. And as they died, the swarm died with them. Across the galaxy, swarm bioships stopped fighting. Some went silent, drifting lifelessly through space. Others turned on each other, their coordination gone, their hive minds shattered. Without the queens to guide them, they were just animals. Hungry, dangerous animals, but animals that could be killed. It was over. Stood beside as the last swarm queen died. They watched the hive world burn together. Why? She asked softly. Why did you really come? You did not know us. We feared you. We called you monsters. Why help? Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Because on Earth we learned something a long time ago. We learned that the strong must protect the weak, not because it is easy, not because there is reward, but because it is right. He turned to look at her. Every terrible thing my species ever did to itself taught us that lesson. Every war, every genocide, every failure. We paid for that knowledge in blood and tears across thousands of years. And when we finally understood, we made a promise. What promise? Never again. Never again would we stand by while innocent people suffered. Never again would we ignore a cry for help. Never again would we let the darkness win because we were too afraid to fight it. He looked back at the burning world. You asked for help, we came. That is all. That is everything. Reached out and took his hand. He let her. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. The war was over. The swarm was destroyed. The galaxy began to heal. And humanity was no longer quarantined. The collective voted unanimously to lift all restrictions on human contact. They were welcomed into the galactic community, not as monsters but as heroes, as guardians, as friends. Trade routes opened, diplomats exchanged visits, scientists shared knowledge, artists shared stories. Slowly, carefully, trust was built. Years passed. New generations were born who had never known the swarm, who only knew the peace that came after. But they all knew the stories. They all knew how that peace had been won. On the anniversary of the Battle of Station, the collective held a ceremony. Representatives from every species gathered to remember those who had died, to honor those who had fought. Admiral, old now but still proud, stood before the assembly. He spoke about sacrifice. He spoke about courage. He spoke about the bond between humans and their allies. And he spoke about the future. One day, he said, new threats will come. New challenges will arise. That is the nature of existence. But we will face them together, not as humans and aliens, not as predators and prey, but as one people, one family, united by the lessons we learned in fire and blood. He looked out at the crowd. at thee and all the others, at his fellow humans, at who had become his closest friend. The galaxy will remember what happened here, and when new species discover the stars, when they encounter the unknown and feel afraid, they will hear the same story whispered among the stars. He smiled one last time. If you are innocent and you are threatened, do not despair. Send a signal, ask for help, because they are listening, and they will answer. The crowd roared with applause. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages on 1,000 worlds, the story was told. The story of how aliens called for help, and how humanity responded with firepower, with sacrifice, and with love. The end.